ski, a bit more.
Okay, let me just do a quick intro. Hi, Anna K. Morris here with Ask Me Anything Live. And I'm so excited. I was just catching up with Anne, who I've known from like jumping fences when we were kids. And now here we are back together again, the Motley Crew. I know. And you're outside of London. Outside of London?
Yeah, so I live in Whitstable. It's a little seaside town southeast on the coast, about an hour and a half outside.
Oh, okay. And do you commute into London?
No, I now work from home and I work in Kent. So I no longer work in London.
Ah, okay. That's a change that I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm so happy you're here. Michelle, I'm so happy you're here. You literally just signed up like an hour ago. Derek was like, oh my gosh, I messaged Michelle and she's going to be here. So how fun is that? Hi. Michelle, can you hear me okay? All right. Well, we're going to keep rolling and we'll just go with it. Okay, so I have some questions that people have sent in, but they aren't live. So you get the first question, Anne. So I'm going to read you what you wrote to me and you can change it. I can answer the question. You can ask more questions, whatever it is. This is your time. So literally anything, including our sex life, Derek. So like, I don't care. Like I'll say whatever. But this is what you wrote to me. So did your decision to stop working and travel for 10 months, sans a regular paycheck, make you anxious at any point? Did you ever question your decision during your travels? I forgot about some of these things. Or were you and Derek confident throughout that you both made the best decision? So that's what you asked me. Is that what you want to know? You want me to start with that?
Yeah, because I think what I'm really interested to know, particularly when you speak about the little voice and just that we already know. And my question is like, did you ever at any time waver and like, did we make a good decision? Was the little voice right? Or was it delusion? Or is it which voice am I listening to? Or did you ever like get stressed throughout the duration? Or was it from start to finish? Yeah, see, we did it. And this is great. This is what we should do. So I'm just very curious about that. Yeah.
I have this, it just left my desk because now it's in the workout area, but it's this thing that like sits on my desk at all times and it says, be scared and do it anyway. Right. And so to all of that, there were moments of like, yes. And there were just as many moments of like, what the actual hell, no. And that's the difference between like the little voice, your inner voice, your God, universe, intuition, whatever you want to call it, and your ego, right? And mostly our ego is what's running the show. And we somehow think that that's the little voice. That's not the little voice. That's been running the program, right? So I believe that we're a soul dropped into a human experience. So when I meditate, and I see, and it's just like colors or, sometimes I see stuff, sometimes I don't. I always meditate right before coaching. And it's just like this open, vast, like nothingness. Like that's what I believe we actually are. And we like signed an agreement with the creator, I call the universe, that like, we're going to have this human experience. But what we never actually, what the universe never promised was that it was going to be a good time all the time. That's just us being like really human and like wanting it to be easy. But that's not what we signed up for. We signed up to have a human experience. And I believe that like as high as the highs are, this is physics. This is just like energy. As much as you are willing to have joy, you on the flip side are willing to have the despair, the sadness, the fear, all of that. And so when I am in those moments of like deep fear, which it's been recent, like yesterday I had a meltdown at a coffee shop. I was like, this is inconvenient. My friend was like, how are you doing? I was like, because I really don't like have that thing anymore called like just be fine. Like I don't do that anymore. And you knew me as somebody that like always did that. And I finally just like can't anymore do that. So like good news and bad news, right? Especially if you're my friend asking me at a coffee shop how I'm doing. And I know that on the flip side of that is a huge breakthrough. So 1 hour after that, like crying in the coffee shop, I was able to flip it all around because I know what's on the other side of a breakdown is like a rainbow. Like, and so it's that. And I've gone through my life and I can see the evidence of when I trust my little voice that is not very loud, but it is present. And because I do the work that I do to make it stronger and I take action, because the thing about our little voice is that it really only wants to play with us when we play with it. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So sorry, these are annoying me. I get real weird when I start coaching and I'm like in the zone. I like can't take off my clothes. I don't take off my clothes, but you know, like shit just starts annoying me. And hi, Michelle. It's so good to see you. I was like in it when you came on. It's so good to see you. So I have a lot of experience now, not trusting my little voice for the majority of my life, but in the last 15 years, I've really started to lean into it and trust it and say like, okay, like even moving to Temple. I mean, Ann and I are both from Temple, Texas. We've both left, you know, to go far, far away. Like we've also lived in England. Ann's in England. Michelle, we know each other from Houston. Derek, obviously, you know, did the same thing. So when the universe said to me in this very quiet moment on a walk, and I had asked, like, where would you have me live? Because I just knew where I was living wasn't right. And when the universe said, like, right here, that was not an answer I wanted. I was crying hysterically. My mom and Derek were like, what is actually wrong with her? Like we know that like she's got stuff going on, but like this is like a whole new level of strange for her. And I'm like on a normal walk on a weekend, hysterically crying. And I just told Derek, I was like, we have to move here. And he was like, you must be kidding me. That can't be. And I had told the universe, like, I want like a downtown feel. I want to be a part of something. I want community. I want family. I want to feel the support. I also want, we were living in I got really specific. I was like, we were living in 1,000 square foot house. I was like, I really want about like 2,000 square feet. I want a 3-bedroom. I want a 2-bath. I want a pool. I want a garage. I want, a yard to play in. Literally 2 houses down from my mom, that house became available. What I didn't say was that it has to be in this neighborhood in Austin, right? Just like I fell in love with Derek and I was like, well, shit, I guess I'm moving to Houston. Well, shit, I guess I'm leaving New York. Like when that little voice has spoken to me, and it's often in my journal or after a meditation, it's not like when I'm active and doing my life, it's less so. I shouldn't say that. It's gotten more so, but I've had a lot of practice with it. So I don't say that like in the beginning, that's not how it ever happened. And it's only really happened recently. The more I obey is not a word that I love, but the more I agree, the more I'm like, okay, I asked you the question, and isn't it shitty when a friend asks you for advice and then you tell them like, yeah, actually, like you shouldn't be with that guy, or like, actually your job, like you should like, and you say it and then they don't do it. Isn't that annoying?
Yeah.
Like, don't you want to never give them advice anymore? Same thing with the universe. The more you ask and don't listen, the softer and quieter and the less it's going to show up. So to your question about traveling around the world, I was scared all of the time and none of the time, if that makes any sense, because at that point, I just had faith that was pretty hard to shake, because I'd had a lot of evidence that like the more I listen to the universe and I do what it's guiding me to do. Now it's never like, it's not like a God, like you must do this. Like the universe for me is like a really like the best friend in the whole world cheering you on. It's not a stern parent. It's not somebody that I'm ever getting in trouble with. It's just that little voice. It's like, you're so smart. Wow. Like that. Like, God, can you believe you just did that? Like, it's like so cheering me on that the more I would do what was in alignment, it just became easier to do the things that it would say, like, and be scared. So there was a moment on our trip. Derek might remember this better than I do, but I don't remember where we were exactly. Oh, I know exactly where we were. I know what hotel room we were in. We were in Jordan. We had just hiked Petra, which is, for those of you who don't know, Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Temple of Doom and all of that. It was one of those. What was it? Indiana Jones. But anyway, Temple of Doom, I think. So it's like every guy's dream, right? So of course this was like Derek's thing. And man, I was not into it. Like it's sand everywhere. I hiked like 8 hours in slippery ass shoes up and down, like it was like 1,000 stairs up to this thing. And, you know, he wanted a picture and I was just like really done. And I just really fell apart that night. And I missed my dog because I left Barney for a year. And that was really, really, really hard. And I did not, I didn't really know what that was going to feel like, but he was like my best friend because Derek worked all the time with you, Michelle. And so Derek was literally gone the majority of our time in Houston. So like Barney was my boyfriend. Barney was my best friend, my boyfriend and everything. So leaving him for a year, like anytime the trip got hard, I really struggled with staying on the trip because I'd left like, you know, my best friend. And that happened a few times. It happened on, when we did a trailer trip for 6 months shortly after our trip around the world, because we weren't tired enough. We went and did a trailer trip and the same thing. I can remember being so go, go, go. We finally landed in Oregon. And I told Derek, I was like, if this is how this trip is going to be, I want no part of it. I don't like how it's feeling. It's like we're trying to prove something. And I just want to relax and enjoy the places that we're going to. And if we're going to have to drive 8 hours every day, set up shop, and then leave again the next morning, that's not fulfilling to me. And it's not how I want it to feel. And so I think that the biggest takeaway was that I always, throughout the experience, would lean into like, how's it feeling? And so we didn't plan the trip in advance. And as we went, we would, you know, there was a specific time when we had been like traveling. And we went to Aix-en-Provence, which is in France, for 9 days. And we went there because I read about it. I had no concept of what, you know, Aix-en-Provence was. It ended up being the perfect place, but we went there for 9 days, which was long considering all that we were doing. But the reason that I went there was because it said in the description that there's nothing to do here except for sit at cafes and drink coffee and go to markets. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. And so for that whole year of the trip around the world, and then another year after that, for the whole 2 years, I got really, really good at paying attention to how things were feeling good and not good. And so if they were, you know, and then I would stop doing the things that didn't feel good. And I think that has served me like tenfold later in life. And so I said many, many, many times after our trip, like, we really can do anything. And it was such good preparation for having kids, because Derek and I were not raised the same way from a parenting standpoint. And I knew really early on, like my parents split up when I was 21. So I was pretty jaded, to say the least. But I knew early on that we couldn't start a family together because we just weren't on the same page. And that trip was what really got us on the same page. And my mom will say things to me now like, oh, well, do you need to check with Derek? And I'm like, no, because we think the same way. But that in that time, that's when I got really clear and we got on the same page. And even though, yeah, you have something to add? Okay, Derek's here, something to add. Oh gosh, you're listening.
Well, no, I was just going to say, because we do get asked this question a lot about our trip around the world, less so now because it's been so long, and specifically to your question, I think, I don't know if the question comes from you kind of maybe wanting to do something like this or entertaining it, but I think the thing that gave me a lot of comfort, a career guy who left a lucrative job, and people kind of like, wait, like you're kind of like you're on a roll here and you're on a fast track and I'm just gonna make sure I understand this. You're gonna walk away from that and go travel around the world. And the thing that gave me comfort is I knew in my heart that that's not what I wanted. So it wasn't a problem to walk away from it. Now it helped to have money and all that kind of set aside, which we did because we planned this out. But why wouldn't I do that? Because I knew I had to take comfort in the fact that I knew what we were going to do afterwards. And that could be two things. That could be you're coming back to the same job. Maybe you're taking a hiatus. Or in my case, I wasn't coming back and I was okay with that too. Actually, I was better with that. I took so much freedom in knowing that I wasn't coming back to that job that I no longer liked and no longer served me. And so when we go planning a trip like this, is that, it does help to know like what's next. Are you provided for? Do you have money? Do you have some runway? Do you know what you're going to do after? Well, I didn't know what I was going to do afterwards, but I knew what I wasn't going to do.
Right.
And so we left on that trip with a ton of freedom, knowing that everything that I had done in the past and everything that had been my identity, my ego, if you will, all that was behind me now.
Right.
And that gave me a lot of freedom to go out and enjoy this experience, being okay with not knowing what's next, and maybe even relishing in it because I knew what wasn't next.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. No, thank you. That's very helpful from both of you what that experience was like. And thank you for sharing that.
I just want to add one other thing. When you're in a place of like figuring out, which I'm really careful about because I don't love the term that's always like a red flag as the coach in me, because you can't actually figure it out. It's really about like just like relaxing and letting it be like easy and dropping in. And that can be a hard thing to learn. It's not like it's counterintuitive, right? Because we're in a society and in a culture of like always trying to like effort and figure it out. When I was asked 15 years ago, when I really started this journey, what made me happy? That was the worst question you could ask me because I really had no idea. I'd never been asked that. I was like, just like grinding it, right? Like I was just like making my life. And then I was like, oh shit, I'm really not happy. But the question of what makes me happy, no clue, zero. So when somebody is in that place, or when you're in a place of like, what's next? A good place to start, if you're like, what? I have no idea. You start with what's not next. You start with what doesn't make you happy. And as I started building the list of the things that I don't like, then you start to get nuggets of like what does make you happy. And my number one trick, and I'm going to give away like a huge, my number one thing, and I coach this in the Reconnect, is I coach about jealousy. Because jealousy is a map. It's not a bad thing. It is your very, very, very best friend, because the things that you see other people having that make you jealous or you get annoyed or whatever, like it shows up differently, right? Like go to Instagram and like that's really just designed for that. And people can be really weird about this. They're like, well, I'm not jealous. I'm like, well, okay, maybe you're being nice about it, but like you have some version of jealousy. Maybe you're like, oh, but I'm really happy for them. Like, fine, be happy for them. But like, there's something that kind of like gets you, right? It's because you want that. And I can remember seeing people traveling around the world, and I was like, I would be so annoyed because I really, 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 really wanted that. I would not see pictures of kids and think like, oh, I really, 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 that wasn't happening for me. So for me, it was very clear that before I could commit to like taking care of something like a child, I needed to go do this thing. And it wasn't convenient. And it was like a month after Derek and I got married. And I was like, listen, like we're set up for like the perfect family, right? With our like free Montessori school, perfect little house. You remember that house, Michelle? It was like, so like, right? And I just couldn't. And I told Derek, I was like, we should get divorced. And he was like, you're so dramatic. You're so dramatic. And I was like, yes, I am. But also like you want kids. And like, I don't know if I can do that. And I know I can't do that right now. And I just was really clear about it. I was clear that like, if I had to have a child in that moment, I would die. It felt like that for me. And so I just said, I want to go and take this gap year. I want to go and travel around the world. And it took Derek some time to get on board, as it usually does. Sorry, honey. But what I always knew about Derek when we first got together is that like, he's a yes. It just takes him a little bit longer. Like my yeses are a little bit faster. And the big thing when we were looking at like going and traveling like that, less so for me because of the faith that I have. And like, I've been doing this a lot, and Derek hadn't as long. He really, especially as an accountant, needed to know that there was a certain number in the bank. And I was like, and as a salesperson in my background, I was like, what's the number? And the minute he told me the number, now we're playing ball. And he had 14 questions. I remember we got like a little tipsy on a trip in Colorado. It was like our last night of the trip. And he comes like running back with like a bottle of gin. And he was like, I know what I need to know. And I wrote it down as fast as I could, these 14 questions. And we came home and I had them answered on Tuesday. I was like, let's go. I mean, I think our house was on the market 10 minutes later. Like it was that, because I go fast, right? Like once he's on board, you got to catch Derek before he changes his mind. Like that's, so it was really fast, but it had been happening for about like a year and a half before that. But really like what the comfort was for Dee was the money, knowing that like we had a little, like that we had a runway that he would feel safe walking away from what he was walking away from. I hope, does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, no, it's really, really helpful. Really, really helpful. Thank you.
I think the more that you do it, so that's like a big thing, right?
Yeah.
The more that you do it in little ways, it just starts to build the muscle, right? Like you don't just like go to CrossFit. That's how people get injured. You just like start with a walk. Like you don't go from like sitting on like being a couch potato to like, entering a CrossFit or like an Ironman competition. You would never do that. And yet we have this expectation of like, you're here and you want to be here. And it's like, there are steps along the way. And so I would obviously like start with journaling and just start playing around with the universe and say like, if you wanted to tell me anything, what would you tell me? Like start actually like, and if you don't believe in something out there, just pretend that you do, right? Like, whatever it takes, but start to actually like ask. And I've always been, the more I ask, the more I'm surprised and the easier things get. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got it. All right, Michelle, did you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, I think I was muted.
Okay.
I guess it was really weird because when Derek texted me earlier, I guess I was confused. I thought we were asking questions.
Yes.
regarding ourselves,
You are.
but it is applicable to you guys. I guess.
No, but I do want you to ask questions for yourself. I'm here to coach you. So Anne had a question about traveling, and that happened to pertain to something that I'd done. But you had asked, how do you find your purpose and passion?
Right. Yeah, that was my question. Like,
Is it still your?
what was your path in finding that?
Oh, I mean, so first of all, it's not linear, right?
Right.
Like it's real twisty. It's real like, we already know the answer, and you already know. It's only that we are so programmed to be like, well, it can't be that easy. Or no, but that's not a real thing. Like, so Derek wanted to be an architect when he was 7. I wanted to be an interior designer, or like teacher, or like everything that I'm doing right now is everything I was doing at 5 years old. I mean, Anne can attest to that. I was like putting on plays, and like, that's totally the person that's like hosting a retreat, and like, let's have a dance performance, and like, all these characters together. Like I was doing that at the house on Dove Circle, Anne, right? Like,
yeah.
and so I believe, and I've such good chills right now, which is always like my sign of like, yes, keep going there, which is why I meditate before I coach and don't like look at anything. But who we are as little kids is innately who we are. I don't think that we change that much, but we develop ways of being that we think are more appropriate or safe, or they're going to help us survive if we've been in trauma, right? So like I really, really love my family, and like it was not, when I look back, I'm like, wow, that was a really like that. There was a lot going on, like just there's just a lot going on, and so I became perfect.
Mm.
And then the minute I left home, like my family fell apart, and so I can see now that like I wasn't asking myself what made me happy, because like that was not gonna work in the dynamic of like surviving my childhood. And I don't mean that, Mom, if you're watching, like I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, but it felt like everything was kind of always on eggshells.
Mm-hmm.
So then I just wanted to get straight A's and be a really good swimmer and just get it right and not misstep. And then the minute I left home, man, did I go crazy, right? Because I'd been so like getting it right for so long that I just ran away to New York and just like partied all the time and racked up a bunch of debt and dated all the wrong guys and slept with all the wrong guys and did all the things except for like major drugs. That I'm proud of. But like all the other things I was doing. And because I just had to like get it out of my system. And so I believe that finding your passion and purpose is actually like really easy if we just go back to our childhood. And we look at what we were doing that just we did. We didn't even think, like I have a 3-year-old, like I watch him do stuff and like he's not thinking about it. He's building houses everywhere, which is hilarious, like family business, great. But like he loves winning. He's like so crazy competitive. And like I'm not enforcing that. That's what he's doing automatically. So then you just want to watch that and have it not get diminished. But that's not what our generation of parents really did, right? So my next thing for you is the jealousy map. That can be really, really helpful on like what your passion and purpose might be. I was always jealous of life coaches. I was always jealous of people flipping houses. Less so about that. I wasn't jealous of interior design stuff. Derek was jealous of people flipping houses. So you want to pay attention, right? Like I was jealous of people traveling around the world. When I lived in New York and didn't have a dog, I was jealous of people that had dogs. I was jealous of people that had their own schedule, that made whatever kind of money they wanted to, whether it's a lot or a little. I didn't like that a company told me what my earning potential was. That frustrated me. I felt like confined. I don't like confinement. So that then started to guide me. And it wasn't until COVID hit that I started coaching. And it was really because I felt really lonely. And I started coaching the artist way because I just wanted some friends to do it with me. And I was like, maybe people want to do it with me. And then 20 people signed up in one night. And then I started coaching. And now if I don't coach, I feel like kind of dead inside. I tried it the last few years. I've tried to just have happy karma homes and I've tried to have that be enough. I've tried to have motherhood be enough. It's not, neither one are. And so when you get clear about like where time slips away, like what are you doing in your life? There are things that you do that you're like, I can't believe that time just flew by. Can you answer that question? Do you have something that you do that time just flies by for you?
No, really, I can't. I do well research, and I love talking to people, getting to know people, asking them in-depth questions about themselves, who they are, how they were brought up. So I can really get caught up in finding out who a person is, and the way they think,
Yeah.
and all of that.
So coaching might be interesting for you, which I could totally see. Teaching, yeah, journalism, like, these are all, it's all just a place to kind of get curious.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you journal?
On and off, and that's another thing I wanted to work on is consistency. So like I'll start something and I don't know, I have these high highs. So, I get super excited about a new project or whatever, and I'm 1,000% in, and I'm just going. And then I just drop it and I'm no longer doing it anymore. So it's the consistency as well.
Yeah.
So I journal sometimes.
I think that the biggest breakthrough that I've had recently is to keep my word to myself. And so as a result, I've been just doing a little bit. And so I just want to offer that, like, if you could just say like, okay, I'm going to journal every day for the next 30 days. And like, I like a calendar where I can like check it off, right? Because I like, to be a good student and all that stuff. So whatever it is for you, right? And I'm going to do it for 30 minutes for 30 days. That's how I started doing coaching videos. I was like, I'm going to do 30 days of coaching videos. I'm not going to miss a day. I'm going to do it every single day. And I'm just going to see how I feel at the end of it. And I was like, okay, 30 days are up. That's it. And people were like, you're not going to stop, are you? I was like, I'm not. I love doing it, but I didn't know that. So journaling can be, it is like, it's my number one tool, because on those pages, you can play around with, if I had to guess, so would be a journal prompt for you. If I were just guessing, what would my passion be? What might my purpose be? And you can literally just like spend 30 minutes playing around and brainstorming. And then the next day, and then the next day. And as you keep playing around with it, you'll see that the same thing is showing up. That's why when people are like, I don't know, I'm like, no, you do. We just aren't trained to think it's as easy as it is.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So if you just like get curious, then you can start moving more in that direction. I also want to say that like we live in a culture right now of like, working, being in your passion and your purpose and all of that. And like, sometimes we just need to make money. And so like, so there's, I'm always mindful of that. Like it's really like our body of work. And there's this really great artist that I follow, Mari, I can't remember her name, Mari Andrews, I think. And she's like, I love being a barista. And she like now like, you know, makes lots of money being an artist. And she's like, I really miss being a barista because like being an artist by myself in my apartment in New York is lonely because she's not interacting with people. And so I also think that like this whole concept of like living your passion and your purpose all the time and then having to like make money from that, you know, like I like that I make money from different places.
Right.
And just that like we are bringing that same joy and enthusiasm to all the things that we do. And I know this about you, that like you do have such a passion for people and like learning and understanding them. So then it's like, you know, okay, well then what do you do with that? Maybe it's that you mentor kids after school. Like, I don't, you know, it could look so many different ways. Are you asking this because of career changing or wanting to do something that's more fulfilling or?
I think right now, I think I'm in a mode of just, you know, making the money, paying the bills, but I would love to find my passion and purpose, turn that into a way of making a living as well.
Absolutely. So when I was in pharmaceutical sales, I knew like, okay, I like the money, I like paying my bills, and what I'm doing is not fulfilling. But I don't want to sell drugs. But for 4 years, I started another business and I had a wellness consulting company on the side, taking all of the skills and all of the things that I was good at in pharmaceutical sales, but parlaying it into my passion for yoga and meditation and coaching. And then when that got solid enough financially, I was able to leave. And then they let me go. And then they gave me 9 months of severance and all this money and all like and same thing happened with Derek, right?
Right.
So just look at like where you might want to carve out some time to start flexing that muscle, right? The more you dance with that piece of you that feels really good, the more the universe is going to bring you more of it, more of it, more of it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, the friend that takes your advice, like, don't you like love when that friend calls you and like asks, and you're like, oh, and then they took my advice and they just had such like a great result. And you were like so excited. So that's the same thing with the universe, right? It's all like the radio station is already playing, but can we tune into it? And journaling for the next 30 days, just make it a game. Good stuff. All right, anything else? Or should I? Okay, cool. Okay, so I had somebody write in this question that's really good. And I'm like, oh God, I hope this wasn't my sister. Okay, so I have an older sister who triggers me. I realize that I've been blaming her for multiple things over the past 15 years when I should be pointing the finger at me for my unhappiness. I've tried sitting down and talking with her, but we don't see eye to eye. I'm at the point where we can't even be in the same room together. I've tried avoidance and silencing her text messages. She's made it very clear that she doesn't want a relationship with me and is always ready to pick a fight. I know that I cannot control what she says or does, but how can I control what I say and do? Okay, good. I mean, that's a good question, right? I mean, I think we all have somebody in our life that we're like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so.
Right.
And it's interesting because like the last question that she lands on is, how can I control what I say and do? And we have it that we are somehow not in control of what we say and do. And my question to the person is, if you're not in control of what you say and do, who is? Who actually is in control? So first we have to get responsible for like, you are in control. And if you don't feel safe with that person, then don't have any communication with them and don't see them and don't, you know, so Anne and I know each other, and Anne is very, very good friends with my sister. I don't talk about Eva a lot, especially in public coaching. I do more so in private coaching, but we have ups and downs in our relationship. And there was a period where she did not speak to me for a year and a half. I still don't know why. And when I've broached it with her only once, she said, sometimes that's just the only way. So that might be applicable for you, to the person that wrote this in. That might be applicable, that it's time for you to say, we need no communication. Because what you also said in here is that you've tried to avoid it. She's made it very clear that she doesn't want a relationship. Well, if she doesn't want a relationship with you and she's always ready to pick a fight, then why do you keep putting yourself in the situation? And I understand that we want to have close relationships with our family. And sometimes we need space above anything else, is really the bottom line. And especially because I know this person that wrote in, on your journey to healing and rediscovering yourself, you will find that the relationships around you will actually shapeshift. It's not that you need your sister to change, it's that you need to change. So if we're looking out in our life and we're seeing like a whole bunch of stuff that we don't like and doesn't work, good news, bad news, you created it. So that also means you can change it, right? My sister and I have been learning for a long time how to navigate like being grown-ups, and like we don't always do it well, and we do it better probably with distance. And so she is in Nepal right now, so that's really easy. But I would say handle your own business is really the coaching, because I wouldn't have always been able to live 2 houses down from my mom, but it wasn't until I started taking care of me and being really, really clear about what feels good, what doesn't feel good, that I could communicate to her when like, hey, this is happening and it doesn't really work. And I'm just wondering if we could create something different, right? Rather than like, why do you always do this? And flying off the handle, like we are so prone to do. And so I think as you invest more in yourself, and as you allow yourself, this is why I love journaling so much, is you allow yourself to like let all the trash land on the page and not out of your mouth at people. It has somewhere to go, because this isn't like a silver bullet. You don't just start journaling or working with a coach and then you're like fixed, because there's nothing to fix. But we mostly don't have an outlet to put all of the crap of our ego like somewhere, right? And so, I mean, that's why I really think I should have a huge bonfire and just burn all the journals, because like I never want anybody to read anything that's in there, including myself, right? Because it's horrible. Like I've written like volumes of garbage about myself. Like sometimes when Derek's like, what's going on with you? I'm like, could you read the 3 pages that I just wrote? He's like, holy shit, you think that about yourself. I'm like, it's bad. And so if we just like let ourselves have those feelings and then recognize that, yes, I have those feelings about this person, and also I love them so much. And how can those both exist? And that's just the human experience. And there's nothing wrong. And nobody said that like in loving somebody that you also like them all the time. You don't. And that's okay. And so I would recommend space and go to work on yourself. You get so that you feel back in control of what you say and do. If you're feeling out of control with what you say and do, then that's the first thing, is you've got to like get yourself like safe. that like you start to feel safe with yourself, that you're not just like going to fly off the handle, that, you know, journaling for sure, but, you know, certainly like sleep and, you know, eating well and like, not, you know, I recently quit drinking. Like I noticed that, you know, that wind down glass of wine while I was giving the kids a bath was making me like really irritated later when they wouldn't go to sleep. So I was like, oh, wow, like cut that out. And now I'm not so bothered. They still don't go to sleep when I want them to, but at least I'm not so bothered about it. So we have to start to recognize the patterns that we think have to happen. They're all choices. Like people say like, oh, I'm not a morning person. What does that mean? Like if you had to get up because like your house was on fire, you'd be a morning person, you get out, like, right? It's all just the stories that we tell ourselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. On that same note, I just want to answer a couple more. This is something that speaks to what you had said, Anne, and it's really, if you watched the coaching video from last week, a really amazing woman asked it. She said, how do you trust yourself when you have lots of evidence that you cannot be trusted? It's right. Like if you haven't had a chance, like go back, it's last week's, it's on YouTube. It's the Ask Me Anything video from September 13th. Tammy Patel asked that. And then she gave all the evidence of why she couldn't be trusted. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, you've got some good stuff there. Right. Or like, you know, I have a lot of friends that are in AA and they're like, oh yeah, like I can't be trusted. Like, look at all these things, all these ways that I blew up my life. And I'm like, okay. And if you went back on a treasure hunt of like the times that you did pay attention to your little voice, because that trusting that we think, that piece of us that we think we can't trust is what was all ego. It's not actually our little voice, right? And so there's this innate sense that we have as human beings that we think there's something to get right versus having the experience of being human and being in life. So I think of this story that Tammy shared in last week about she just felt so strongly about buying this house and like insisted and bought the house. And then 1 year later, the house got struck by lightning and burned down and everything in it. So that's a lot to contend with, to say that like, see, I had this little voice that said we had to buy that house. And then we did, and then this happened. So you could make the case that you can't be trusted. Except that was already there, right? That wasn't just the house thing. She'd already had the story playing out. And we have those stories that are playing out time and time and time again, right? And it's about recognizing that all it is a story. And stories can be rewritten. And stories are more easily rewritten when we start to develop, just to get it like a little science thing, like neuroplasticity, like new ways of driving to school, if that makes sense, right? Or like of driving to work. Like you always drive the same way and you're like, I don't even know how I got here, because you just drive that same way every day. That's what happens in our brain, right? So once you start to put the pen on the paper every day, and you start to journal every day or meditate every day or go for a walk or whatever it is, once you start to do that, you now start to be somebody that you can trust. And we mostly don't trust ourselves because we are always quitting on ourselves. And so then you go and look and say like, yeah, see all the things that like I can't be trusted with, like money or relationships or drinking or, you know, buying houses or whatever. And we didn't just sign up to like have a good time in life, right? What I would say is that like, I don't know why that house burned down or why that happened, but like all of her family made it out. I don't even know if they were there or not, it doesn't matter, but her family is all well. And that's an incredible experience to go through that like many people will never, ever, ever go through. And I always look at those pieces of my own puzzle is like, you know, I like a bit of drama. Let's be honest. Like I kind of get off on it. Like I like it to be real hard before it's real easy, right? Because I like contrast. Like, okay, so these flamingos right here, you can only see the white of the flamingo's beak because it's up against black or because it's up against a darker shade, right? So contrast is not a problem. Contrast, like the darkness is what allows us to see the light. We just want it to be like so like white bread boring. And we think that we do, and we fucking don't. And then we cry about how hard it is. And I'm like, bitch, you want it to be hard. I say that to myself. Like when I think about like, you know, when times have been hard, I look back and I'm like, I totally loved it. It's the truth, you know, because then you've gone through something, right? When it's just like easy and like no big deal and da 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 da, like I just think that's kind of boring. And so when it gets hard, Anne, and you're traveling around the world and you're like, what am I actually doing? And like, oh my gosh, like there you are again. Like we also had no friends, no family. Like Derek and I were everything to each other all the time, which is like great and terrible. Because I'm like, oh my God, you're always here. And we like had to navigate that. And that's really, I think, like the whole point of this experience as a human is to enjoy being with yourself, right? And to not make it so bad when things are bad. You're like, oh, this is just the dip before the, you know, before the roller, like it's on a roller coaster. Do you guys ride roller coasters?
No,
No.
I've ridden one before, but no, I never.
But no. How do you ride a roller coaster, Anne?
Well, to be fair, like I think the last time was like 6 years ago. I think I white knuckle it. I'm not one of these. Like I want to, but I'm like that. I'm like, and then I pretend to have fun. And then after it's over, I'm real proud that I did it.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. And you're real proud. Yeah. So I ride it a little different. I ride it like arms up and I'm crying. And all I want to do is get off. And I'm having so much fun. And then I'm crying again. And then I'm having so much fun. And so the only thing is to just not jump off the roller coaster. But like once you know more about yourself, like I know that like I like to like be laughing, crying. Like, so then when I do it in my life, I'm like, yeah, that's me. I do that. I don't have to get like so upset about it. Or if you're like white knuckling something, you're like, oh yeah, there I go again. Being Anne Adams, being Michelle Newton, not getting on the roller coaster. What would it look like if I did? Right? Then you can just like be like, you could just laugh at yourself because we're all really hilarious. And then we think it's like such a big deal. Like it's not. We're just trying this all out, seeing how it goes. And what the one thing I want to leave you guys with is like, it's really not, I mean, I know that this sounds a bit cliche, but like, it's so not a dress rehearsal. Like I mean, I have a 3 and a 1-year-old and Derek called in the other night and he was like, you're missing it. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like they were in the pool and I was like, I'm just so aware that all of the moments in our life are the things we're going to look back on. And can I stay present enough to not miss it? So that when I look back and man, I really like, I sucked the marrow out of that. Like I didn't leave any stone unturned. And that was so hard and that was so messy. And boy, did I fuck some things up. But like, gosh, I can laugh about it now, you know? And gosh, that was so fun. I mean, I had totally forgotten about our trip around the world. And I think about like, I remember coming back and thinking, I can do anything. And then I had kids. And now I'm like, and so, you know, so that's hilarious. Like I thought, you know, and we wouldn't even have any bills. We didn't have a house. Like we, you know, it was like a cakewalk. Except it was really hard to like have no home and find your home in yourself. So that's something else, right? Because every experience that we're going through is valid. And people and everybody's experience is valid. Right. So I just want to offer that, like, just start playing on the pages. Just start like getting curious, cutting yourself some slack, getting that like you've only ever done this once and you're just figuring it out. Okay.
Thank you, Anna.
You got it.
This is
That
good.
was so great. Thanks for being here. That was really fun.
It was.
Yeah, it was. Thank you so much.
You got it. So this will be recorded, so I'll pop it on YouTube. So if you forgot anything that I said, it'll be there. And
Great.
anybody watching, we still have a couple weeks before the Reconnect starts, so that'll be really fun. It's my 12-week coaching program. It's on the website. And as you know, like, just start somewhere, right? Like Michelle, like the 30 days of journaling, and like, you know, the white knuckles, see if you could just take a finger off, right?
Absolutely.
Or
Yeah.
just start with little things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Be sweet and gentle to yourselves.
Will do. Thank you, Anna.
You got it. Bye, girls.
Bye.